Tories MP backed Boris up, throwing a critical blow to Macron, shot down the French leader. Science Minister George Freeman remarked it was pantomime season following the reports President Emmanuel Macron branded Boris Johnson a clown as the Tory minister shot down the French leader. Reports from French magazine claims President Emmanuel Macron described Boris Johnson's government as a circus in private and even branded the Prime Minister as a clown. Mr. Macron's words come as cross-channel relations tumble to new lows following the migrant crisis and fallout from the AUKUS deal announced earlier this year. George Freeman appeared on Sky News addressing the comments and skewered the French president for playing up to the public because an election is looming. The magazine claimed Mr. Macron said Mr. Johnson was trying to portray himself as a victim to avoid the blame of a catastrophic Brexit. Former French ambassador to London, Sylvie Berman, told Times Radio that relations had never been so bad since Waterloo. Sky News presenter Kay Burley wanted to know what Mr. Freeman thought of the comments and what his response would be. He replied, "Well, I think we're in a pantomime season, aren't we? And there's a French election coming. It's a pretty unhelpful word because the Prime Minister isn't a clown, he's the elected Prime Minister of this country with a very big mandate leading this country through the pandemic. The truth is we are looking to work very closely with France on the border issue on tackling the problem of European migration at source. That's why we're investing in trying to stabilize countries so that people aren't coming here. With France, we need to make sure that people in France are being supplied with boats and being pushed out of the channel." Mr. Freeman said Home Secretary Priti Patel was working closely with her French counterparts to address the issue of illegal migration. He added the relationship between the two countries was actually better than the quote suggests. Ms. Patel was uninvited from key migrant talks after the Prime Minister published an open letter to the French government laying out demands for the migrant crisis. In the letter, the UK government called for an increase in intelligence sharing, more manned and unmanned aerial surveillance and UK forces aiding the French with patrols. However, Mr. Macron flipped out at the letter and did not think it was the right way to conduct talks and so uninvited the Home Secretary from an emergency migrant summit. Former Brexit negotiator, Michel Barnier, appeared on French television and said it was a deliberate provocation from Mr. Johnson. France has resisted plans to bring UK troops on French land who would help authorities monitor their northern coast. En-Marche politician Bruno Bonnell explained he could support the move if it was not done to make the French look complacent. Last week, 27 people died crossing the channel after their boat capsized, making it one of the worst disasters in the stretch of water. Tensions between France and the UK have continued to bubble as record numbers of boats have crossed the channel into the UK. In another news, reported comments by French President Emmanuel Macron branding British Prime Minister Boris Johnson a clown and a knucklehead were unhelpful, a British government minister said on Thursday. The French president's scathing assessment of the Prime Minister threatened to fuel an already bitter diplomatic row between London and Paris which has been simmering for weeks. Business Minister George Freeman suggested the remarks belonged in the pantomime season and linked them to the impending French elections. Of course, the Prime Minister isn't a clown, he is the elected Prime Minister of this country with a very big mandate, leading this country through the pandemic. The President had already lashed out publicly at Johnson, accusing him of not being serious in his response to the capsizing of a migrant boat in the Channel with the loss of 27 lives. But in private he went further, attacking the Prime Minister for seeking to make France a scapegoat for Brexit, which had proved catastrophic for Britain. The latest flare-up comes after London and Paris have been publicly at odds for weeks about post-Brexit fishing rights and the Northern Ireland Protocol in Britain's withdrawal agreement with the EU. Downing Street said it was important to use measured and appropriate language in relation to the protocol after Macron reportedly suggested resolving the current deadlock was a matter of war and peace. The president was reported to have told the European Committee of the Regions, an EU advisory body, it's a question of war and peace for Ireland. So we should avoid any temptation to be less than serious. In response, the Prime Minister's official spokesperson said, when it comes to the protocol it is vital that we use measured and appropriate language given the sensitivities involved. It is obviously welcome that Mr. Macron recognizes that a serious situation needs to be resolved. We urgently need to make progress.